The second fly sheet are the slides that I will be trying to make use of. So therefore, if I don't have time for them, you have them printed out for you. And the whole of the presentation is on the web. As you know by now, every lecture is put on the web. So just in case you wish to go back to anything that you don't get in a lecture, not just for mine, remember you can go to the web and you can listen to it again, or you can do whatever you like. The first 2 pages are an outline of a lecture given on Plato. The person who usually gives the Plato lecture is on leave this semester, and that's why you have to put up with me. This is a lecture that was often given after an introduction to Socrates and even to Plato. So basically what it tries to do is to focus on important themes that you might find in this text, the Republic. And let me apologize right from the beginning, and you know what I'm going to say, but basically that is that I apologize for whenever I happen to be interrupting your communication with another human or with the mobile, all right? So I hate to interrupt anyone when they're speaking, because I'm still hearing, I'm still hearing lots of people speaking. And I always want to know, I'm curious, I want to know what they're talking about. It's probably more interesting than what I'm saying. All right, everybody seems to be here now. Please take your seats. One more person, that's the last one I'm going to wait for. Okay, so basically this is a lecture on Plato's Republic, and Republic here does not mean a kind of system of government, a particular government, a system of government. Rather, it has the meaning of Plato's forms in general. And so when I try to help you understand what are his forms and hope to get out of your mind everything they've told you about in high school or on the web, I ask you to just read Plato. It's always more interesting than reading about Plato. The Republic for him means this is the rational structure, the best possible rational structure for any community, for any state, for any nation. When they're thinking of how to structure the state, then the Republic is an investigation into what might reason help us to learn more about a political situation. So it's philosophy being applied primarily to politics, but to politics in the sense of trying to find direction, trying to see how can we move away from these 2 events that had very much influenced Plato. Plato was a tragic poet, so we might have been reading an Oedipus play by him had he not met this gentleman. Anybody know who that is? Of course, it's written up there so you can read, I'm sure. All right, this is Socrates. This is a famous symbol of the philosopher who attempts to practice what he preaches. Very few of us around. Haha. But a philosopher who isn't just trying to understand things mechanically. Cosmology was what philosophy was all about in his day. Studying the cosmos, its order, the laws, getting science going, getting a rational investigation of the cosmos going. But Socrates felt that something very serious and very important was missing in the philosophy of his day. So he wanted to bring philosophy down to earth. He wanted to bring philosophy down to the human level. And the main question is, philosophy and reasoning should be helping us to discover more and have more and more light about what is the good life. That's what we're interested in. Everybody wants a good life. I don't think anybody wants a bad life, or everybody wants a good life. Well, now how can reason help us to understand? Well, what is a good life? This was Socrates' way. And had we had the Apology, which is a very good book to read, a very dialogue, it's not very long, but that would introduce you to Socrates himself. The story of Socrates, and it's important for you to know that before you think about Plato or the rest of Greek philosophy or philosophy in general. Basically, remember who Apollo was? Anybody remember who Apollo was? Okay. Ra'id Apollo, Samir Apollo. What was his first name? I've forgotten. Everybody know who Apollo? I'm sure you do. Okay. So Apollo had become now in the 5th century before the Common Era a major god in Athens. So we're talking now about Athens. Thucydides is Athens, but now also Socrates is Athens, and Sophocles is Athens. So these three authors, Sophocles for tragedy, Thucydides for history, and Socrates for philosophy, were all operating in roughly this period of time, which one refers to in a general way as the golden age of Pericles. Because Pericles was this ruler who becomes used by Thucydides to represent, he presents the ideals of democracy. If you read the Thucydides, the Pericles speech, the funeral speech, he comes to be a symbol, as all these people become. He becomes a symbol for Plato, certainly, and for others, of a ruler who manages to combine political prowess and ability and is able to rule a state well and to rule it, as a democracy even, but a ruler who has wisdom. So bringing together wisdom and power, because that was the heart of the problem for Socrates, for Plato, for Sophocles. I think you can disagree with anything I say, but at this point, and when you read the simile of the cave in this work, you'll see, I think you'll see the sense of that. The problem for them was again, represented by the sophists. The sophists were the most successful philosophers of the day. If they were universities, they would be teaching at universities, all right? They would be, forming the minds of the human beings, of the people in Athens. Now, the heart of sophism is primarily that you have to discover truth for yourself, very important, but adding to it, there is no truth as such. There's only the truth that suits you, that's best for you. So what is justice? Justice is the will of the ruling party of any particular place. Those who are in power, they decide what is justice in this place. You as a human being, if you have a very intelligent mind, you'll primarily use it to give yourself the most feedback, the most payback. So life was primarily power, but power through intellect, because your intellect is one of the most powerful things you have as a human. So if you want power, then use your intellect for power, not for truth. And this is the heart of what Plato is giving us in the Republic, in the divided line, and the simile of the cave, those two main passages you will read, that basically human beings are all locked into this lust for power. Where did you read about that? Hopefully in Thucydides. Have you done Thucydides? Maybe you haven't reached Thucydides yet, but the key to Thucydides finally is Thucydides the Athenian, democracy, the ideals of democracy. All right? He was extremely disappointed by the Peloponnesian War to see how democracy had gone corrupt and had led to the tragedy of Athens, the great Athens teaching all of the Hellenes how wonderful principles of democracy, all of them in the funeral speech of Pericles. Is a very important passage. And then, as he describes now what happened in the Peloponnesian War, why did Athens lose to Sparta, despite everything that was being said by Pericles about how when you're in a democracy, this makes you stronger and all of that? Why on earth did Athens fall? Well, there are two things that you might want to remember from Thucydides, which will help you understand Plato. And that is, number one, there was the great ideal of democracy, the great ideal of reason. Reason is going to bring the good life, for not just for the individual, but for society. If we use reason properly, all right, we can have a democracy, and we can spread democracy, and this is really the best way for humans to live, not under a tyranny or under anything else. Why did it fail? And this is the heart of the philosophical interpretation that that Thucydides is putting into his history. So it's a history, but it's an interpretation of history. Why do things like that happen? Why does such a tragedy happen? Because Athens, democratic Athens, was such a great thing. Why did it fall? All right? His answer was primarily, once again, something in nature. Like for Oedipus, why does he fall? That's the cosmos. That's nature. What can you do? All you can do is try to do your best and do your best for humanity. Okay, Thucydides sees the problem is not in the cosmos, the gods and all of that, but in nature, in human nature. Human nature being what it is. We'll always be a crab. As soon as we see somebody getting better than us, we'll pull them down, right? Because we want power, we don't want truth, we don't want to admire those who are better than us. That's what a good democracy would happen, put the right person in the right place. Everybody wants to be one of the three presidents of this country, for instance, the triad of, everybody wants to be somebody like that. Nobody is really using their reason and using their power and using everything they have for the good of society or the good of humanity. What is the good life? What makes a good life? So primarily these two things, the second thing of course is, the first thing was the horrors of the Peloponnesian War, which he presents, and one can interpret this and has been interpreted often as the tragedy of Athens, of Pericles in the funeral speech 12. Why is it we can't ever reach that? And then the next tragedy that he witnesses is the assassination of Socrates. Socrates, very few people remember him negatively anymore. He certainly, all of Greek philosophy after Socrates claimed that they were following him, even though they were disagreeing with each other often. But they all claimed that they were being inspired by Socrates. And what did Socrates represent? Socrates represented humility, all right, and reasoning with humility. Okay, and dialogue. Okay. So, Apollo, coming back now to our friend, if you haven't forgotten him, Apollo sends the oracle in Athens. Socrates is the wisest man in Athens. Socrates looks at himself, is there another Socrates around here? Me? I'm the wisest man in Athens? Yeah. Bi's al-hikmah, if I am the representative of that's Russian, by the way. In other words, if I represent wisdom, wisdom isn't very much. He was aware of his own limitation. He was aware of his own ignorance, all right? So he wants to test it. He doesn't just accept it, just like Oedipus, just like Gilgamesh. That's the heroism in those people. What they represent is when you're faced with something that seems irrational, that seems stupid, or that seems illogical, don't just accept it, no matter who has sent it to you. Apollo or no Apollo, and certainly as they understood Apollo in the tragic world, there's no rational reason to believe him or to really trust him. Trust him, not believe him. So basically, now we have Socrates going around investigating. He doesn't just accept it, He investigates. How does he do it? He goes around to all the great people. If he was here in the university, he'd all go to all the professors and the students who all think they know and they know and they know and they know, all right? Knowledge. So he goes and he starts with his Socratic method, helping them to investigate their beliefs. Are they on a rational basis? What are they seeking? What's the final aim of them, all right? He gives and takes with all the great people in Athens, the philosophers, the poets, the businessmen, all people who think they know. And he comes to the conclusion that indeed, Apollo is right. I am the wisest man in Athens. Why? Why is he the wisest man in Athens? If you've been following me, yes? All right. He's the only one who knows he does not know. Right, don't forget that little formula, right? But believe me, it's eternal, it's perennial, okay? It's an extremely, once you understand what he was saying by it, you can apply it in any age and to any human as a very wise thing to become aware of, that you're never going to know in the sense of know everything or even be able to represent one thing in the final way or anything like that. You try, you seek truth, you seek whatever you can, but don't ever get to the point where you think you know, meaning you're not open to any give and take, any dialogue, anything like that. So this is the heart of Socrates' contribution to thought and to humans, you really want to know, well, you're going to have to, first of all, always be remembering your limitation. Know thyself of Apollo meant know your limitations primarily, all right? And so you should know that no matter how great your reason is, you see, this was Ammo Oedipus, great reason, he represents the great reason. What was Sophocles saying, all right? That the greatest reason can never know really what's going on, all right? Therefore, humility comes in there. Humility is awareness. Humility is truth. Humility is objective knowledge of yourself. Humility doesn't mean, oh, I'm no good and all that. That's hypocritical. Humility, if you're good, you say you're good. He had saved them from the Sphinx. He says, I've saved them from the Sphinx. That's not neither pride. That's simply objective. Humility is when he gives in to the chorus and they want him to do something that's going to kill him and things like that. So anyway, this is now the atmosphere of Plato. Here in this period, the 5th century before the Common Era, 500 to 400, roughly in that period, called the Golden Age of Pericles, where you had supposedly a leader who reached a decent level of bringing power with wisdom and power, not just power and not just wisdom. Just wisdom you can't rule. Just power, you have no wisdom. You'll rule only for, you'll rule for whatever your own individual power is for. So this is the atmosphere. Now what he did in the Republic and all of his works, if you flip over just to the fly sheet now, Alfred North Whitehead, a great mathematician who then turned philosopher in the first half of the 20th century, he made this famous statement, which is not, he's not the first one to discover it or invent it. He was saying something that people had come to see all through the Western and Islamic philosophy. So not just Western, all of Western and Islamic philosophy can be seen, you can disagree with that, but can be seen as a series of footnotes to Plato, okay? Whenever you get into Islamic philosophy, you'll see that many of them were following Plato and Aristotle, and certainly Aristotle comes after Plato. So he's in, this is now Ammo. Plato was born in 407 BC, so it was at the sort of the end of this Pericles reign. The mention of Solon there, because Solon is one of his ancestors, and he was the great lawgiver. He had a conversion which will be represented in the simile of the cave. When you read the simile of the cave, we're all prisoners in a cave. That's the simile. What's the cave? The cave is the simile of human society. Everybody thinks they know. Nobody really knows, all right? Only one person knows he knows Socrates. Who doesn't know is Socrates. So in the simile of the cave, what happens in that story is everybody's in the cave, meaning the philosophers, the poets, the businessmen, whoever it's not the uneducated, the stupid, who are in the cave. And then if you educate them, they'll become like you and me because we have a university education. No. It means the quality of the way they use reason. Reason is being abused. Reason is not being used properly. This is the message of Plato. That if we can only get people to see that and start to work to have people use reason properly and get the institutions of society being changed and the education system being changed so that it can give the proper environment for reason to grow properly, very environmental view of things. You cannot grow without the polis. The individual and the polis are one thing. There's no individual without the polis, or else that individual will never be fully human. So there's no human without, no single human without the polis, and there's no polis without humans. So the focus now on the polis, which you've had in Sophocles, you've had in Thucydides. In Thucydides says, if you're not interested, please stop talking back there or leave the room. Would you please stop talking back there? I'm sorry, I'm really interested in what you're saying. Come up here and tell me. But there's been a long stretch of about 5 minutes of talking now. I bear 4 minutes and 60 seconds? 59 seconds, but 5 minutes is too much. All right? You can leave the room. Nobody's going to hit you or do anything. Yeah. My mobile will be insulted, but not me. All right. So basically, it's a picture of that reason. What can reason tell us about how to have a good life, how to have a good society, how to have a good polis is the heart of what he's trying to do for us. So you know what's going on in this book. You know, your teacher's going to then take you through the various things. But this is what's going on in the Republic. He's trying to see whether he can get people to talk, give and take. And so he has Socrates in there as the person who's giving and taking with them. So it's a dialogue. It's part of his mythos, his ability to put things into a picture, into simile, which he had from the tragic world. But now he's using it to give us rationalistic philosophy, to give us an argument about how to use reason, what are the problems of society, how can we change the problems of society, and give you his recipe. And you are invited to take a look at it and gain what you can gain from it, and then, you know, give and take with him. He doesn't present it as this is the final truth that everybody now has to believe and memorize, or you won't get a good grade, all right? Or, you know, it's one of the first efforts to put out there and try to tell you, you know, you want to change society, you want to change the misery there is, you want to get the garbage off the streets, you want to get the, you know, the corruption off. Well, you know, one way to approach it is think about what you can do rationally. And this was in, you know, a long time ago. Right? It was about 2,500 years ago, all right? We still face the same sort of human situation. And so we are being invited by Plato today to try to continue this effort. So don't take Plato as, you know, the idealist. Don't take slogans about Plato. You'll miss Plato. You'll miss Oedipus. You don't take slogans about them, or the, you know, the latest fashion about understanding them, or any slogans. Just like you wouldn't want anybody to make you a slogan after you've become great. Okay, try to understand them seriously. This is one of the slogans that people have come to. You know, Plato and Aristotle. Aristotle is the one who's now down to earth, you know, and Plato has his eye up in the air. You know, they're both trying to deal with real life. Only they have different approaches. They have a different concern. Okay, Plato is obsessed with the polis because of Socrates, because of the Peloponnesian War. Aristotle is coming late, and you'll be studying him soon. He comes after. Aristotle is Plato's student. He comes into a situation where he hasn't lived anything of the Peloponnesian War, the immediate effects of it, really, like Plato has. He was not there when Socrates was being there. His whole existential being, Plato, is different from that of Aristotle. Aristotle is the cooler philosopher, scientist, you know, so he appeals to us much more because we can read him and understand him more simply and straightforwardly and put him into arguments. Plato, like every great poet, which he always was, provokes us through similes, through myths. So he uses all these things, but now not for a tragic view, but now having been converted by Socrates. When he meets Socrates, this is like the prisoner being turned around in the cave. When you read the cave story, please try to remember that. In the cave story, one prisoner is released from the prison of the cave, turned around, all right? And when he's turned around to come free up, he doesn't just come free and want to go up free. He resists. He doesn't want to go. He has to be forced. He resists. But then the more he continues on that path, the more he starts to become used to it, gradual accommodation, all right? So, first of all, a forced turning around. Turning around, what does that mean? That always means repentance, periagog for Plato, metanoia later in monotheistic scriptures. The Greek word means turning around in the opposite direction. You've been moving in this way, and something wakes you up, something challenges you, a Socratic shock, I call it, all right? And you start to take it seriously, and it might take some years, but that's the only way to get out of your cave. Cave means the improper use of the human mind. You live for power, you live for wealth, you live for success. You don't live for truth, you don't live for quality, you live for quantity, if you like, in a sense. You live for self-satisfaction in the negative sense of the word. You don't live to try to make of yourself a decent human being, form yourself as Oedipus represented, forming himself. He refused to do anything that would make of him less of a human being. He never does that. That's why he's a hero. Sophocles is trying to present him as a great man, but trying to speak to the rationalists that, look, this is realism. Do all these things. Use reason, but, you know, the world is tragic. Okay? Plato has been turned around by his meeting to Socrates, and now he believes that the world is rationalistic. It fits our human reason. You see, there's no sync between reason and the cosmos in the tragic world of Oedipus. Right? They're out of sync. The cosmos is thinking one way, and the human's thinking another way. And who gets to win? Well, of course, the cosmos, because it's more powerful. Here, no. For Plato, finally, is going to tell us that cosmos, Homer's cosmos, which was interpreted as tragic through the tragedians, I'm going to take the Odysseus aspect of the rationalist, the one who seeks investigation, and he gets what he wants. He comes back home. Although don't miss the tragic element in Homer. You see, these are great works. He comes home, but he's going to go to Hades. Where's he going to end up? He's going to end up in Hades. That's why Homer has him meet Achilles in Hades, to make him realistic. All right? Okay? Be great and be realistic is the tragic word. Realistic means there's a kind of a curse, there's a kind of a doom on the human being. That no matter how great they are, they can never be sure they're not going to be like, have an ending sort of symbolically like Oedipus's. Okay, now, when we come to Plato, he's telling you, no, there's great agreement between the philosophers and the tragedians. Apollo, the two sayings, know thyself and do whatever you know yourself. The more you know yourself, do whatever you do in the best possible way. All right? And for Plato, that meant, of course, for the polis. Already this was in Sophocles. For the polis, if you do things in the best way, the balanced way. The balanced means the best, the excellent, the most difficult. If you do it that way, that's what will help the polis. This is what will help the humanity. So try to live your life by seeking truth, the truth about yourself, your limitations, your capacities. But whatever you get, in the cave story, don't stay out of the cave once you come out of the cave and you get enlightened. You have a rational duty to come back down. That's the cave story. You have to be forced to come back down, because no one who has been enlightened wants to come back into the messy world of society and politics. He can, be a philosopher, and he can enjoy all the wonderful things of life. No, Plato has him in the cave story. He must come back down. All right? So this is the heart of what Plato is presenting for us. Follow Apollo, know thyself, do your best, help the polis, same things that were driving, really, the world of Sophocles and Oedipus. But don't believe that the world is tragic. No. So he's going to tell you the end of the coming out of the cave, of knowledge and enlightenment, and once you're that, is to recognize goodness is at the heart of the cosmos. All right? Not the Moirai, the fates, all these gods representing different powers, and you never know what's going to happen. No. The heart of the universe, once you get your mind working well, once you're getting reasoned properly, you'll discover that goodness is at the heart of everything. All right? And one way that this is spoken about is that nothing can exist if there's no goodness in it. Just to exist is a goodness. So whatever you look at as evil, it's not pure evil. It's something good that's not doing what it should be doing. That's basically the philosophical idea. In many ways, it's developed in many ways by Plato and by Platonists. But the basic notion is, what's evil? Evil isn't a thing. Evil is when something should be doing something in this way and doesn't do it. When an eye is supposed to be seeing and doesn't see, that's the evil of blindness, all right? For in this kind of thinking, blindness is not a thing. Blindness is the absence of sight where it belongs, not just absence of sight in general, but absence of sight where it belongs. So what he's trying to tell us is that goodness is really at the heart of everything, right? And the more you really use your reason, and the more you change society, and the more you see things, this is what Socrates was looking for, the good life. What's the good life? Well, the good life, you have to understand what is good. What's goodness? Because that's just a word. Okay? Goodness for him finally becomes the end of the journey of the philosopher who is becoming enlightened, the journey of the end of the journey of the mind. Once we've gone through all of the best possible education and institutions, and we're being formed by the right environment, he doesn't stress will at all. It's not will. It's just ignorance or knowledge. Okay? So there's no such thing as a bad will as such. in the Platonic thinking. Okay, you have to wait for Augustine to bring that end to the Plato's system. Here is nature's, all right? And he has the famous myth of the metals. Do you realize that some of you are made out of gold, and some of you are made out of silver, and some of you are made out of bronze? Did you know that? I'm made out of bronze. I don't know about the rest of you, but okay. This was sort of the noble lie of Plato, that to get people to actually want to do what they're best fit to do, because that's what supposedly the aim of the education system and all this is, that each one will know thyself. Each one will know exactly what I can do best. There are only a few things I can do best. I can do many things, but there's excellence always. Many things I can do best, all right? Now, a proper education system will not force anybody to be in a caste system. You know, you're born into it, so khalas, you're there. You're born into it, but it's because of your nature, not because you happen to have lived a life as in this or that or that. It's not inheritance as such. It's nature's. He believed, and that's of course one of the most controversial things in Plato. He believed that we really don't have the same capacity. We don't born with the same nature. So discover what is your capacity. Discover what is your capability. Do it. All right? Then, if we can get the whole system working with this mentality, all right, then I wouldn't be here as a professor. I'd be a garbage collector. I make a much better garbage collector. Believe me, I'm very good at picking up garbage, right? So, in other words, what's happened now is people just go for power, all right? Who they're connected to. شو في لي من ما بيقدر يحكي مين يحكيني شو my CV is not enough. No, we have to do this على أصول. I'm speaking to those of you who watch TV. I know none of you do anymore. This girl, this university student maybe has a wonderful CV for a job she's applying for, and the guy who's interviewing her sees her and he tells her, and she asks him, well, sorry, we can't hire you. So he says, well, it wasn't my CV. What's the problem? He says, no, your CV was fine. Your CV was fine, but we have to do this properly. Okay, see if you know someone who knows me. And he two people on the way. See, he kind of wins the favor of two people on the way. Because we have to do this ala usul. Those of you who don't know Arabic, let your friends, we have to do this properly. We can't just hire somebody because they're fit for it or qualified. See who you are, So actually, Plato's system, whether you agree with the particular way he does it, his aim was not up in the heavens and forms, but to see how we can actually think about things. What is it we want? Identify it, agree on it, discuss it, and then once we have agreed on it, and if we are convinced about it, then let's start the 1,000-year march of changing society so that we can finally we'll be moving towards good and good and good and better and better and better. This is the heart of Plato, unless he's being caricatured, as all great people become caricatured when they don't fit the particular thing you want to. Everybody wants to own Plato. Everybody wants to own Socrates. Everybody wants to own Nietzsche. Everybody wants to own Hawking. Everybody wants to own because they're famous. You see, not because they really are trying to help you understand what they're really saying. This is what's happened to poor old Plato. So Plato often has been seen as the one who has he's got his head up in the air, and Aristotle, because he was the biologist, Plato was the mathematician, all right? And so this cliche of Raphael, a wonderful painting, but not being very fair to either of them, because both of them were discussing the entirety of human life. You can't split Aristotle and Plato in this kind of simplistic way. They're different. They take different courses, but each one is trying to understand human society, the human being, knowledge, the same basic things in the same situation. They have different views, which is wonderful. That's what you want to learn, that you can be in the same situation, be just as intelligent, be all that, but see things in a different way. So for Plato, then, his basic thing was, let's see how we can use reason to change things, to bring the good life to us as individuals and to a state. And so on the very first page there of the fly sheet, what is justice is one major topic, and that's how he begins the whole story. But he goes well beyond what is justice into how should we understand more and more deeply the world we're living in. And until we've understood what he means by goodness, we won't yet have even be able to discuss what he means. If we just put our own view of what is goodness, and it's a form, and these are up in the air or something. Once we've understood what he means by goodness, not just in this work, but in all of Plato, of course, you can't just take the one work of Plato. But he starts off this journey. They're walking. They're taking a walk from Athens to Piraeus, the port. So maybe you're taking a walk from from Saida to the port of Beirut, or from you're taking a walk down. This is very important because there's a human element in Plato. If you miss by making him a formalist, you miss totally what the man's doing. First of all, the first thing there is that dialogue is extremely important. All right, even though you can't always create a wonderful dialogue as a play, so his earlier dialogues are really more dialogues. The later ones become more Socrates, kind of having him expound on Socrates' views, so it becomes less of a real kind of dialogue. But the point is that he thought this is what Socrates had taught him, that you have to go around to people, you have to see what they're saying, you have to gather from them the data of the way they're thinking. All right? You can't just sit down and write the philosophy must come out of dialogue, out of human interaction and human rational interaction together. Very important there. If you take that aspect out, you lose the human aspect of his so-called idealistic philosophy. So what does he say? Okay, what's justice? Let's see if we want, and I'm going to give you a quick resume, and that's this is the first part of your readings. What's justice? He says, well, where are we interested in justice? A very important question. Otherwise, you can say, justice, oh yeah, I know what justice is. You can give wonderful theories, bring in wonderful mythology, bring all sorts of, wonderful, oh, that's great. But he's interested in what is justice in Athens in my day, and how can it be more rational than what it is. So he says, let's first of all look at we're interested in justice in an actual community. We're interested in justice in an actual human. We're not just interested in justice. We're interested in justice in our state. We want justice in Lebanon. We want justice at the university. We want justice for gender equality. We want justice, for something, all right? And he says, but don't forget, you want justice, of course, for yourself also. You want to think of yourself as a good person, as a just person, all right? Then let's see how we can analyze this mathematically, structurally. He's a mathematician. Structural analysis, all right? What's a state? Well, a state has necessary conditions to be a state, and a sufficient condition for a state to be just is what he's going to try to give us through his first argument. All right? Basically, what's a state? A state is something that comes up because we need each other. Each one has different capacities, different things, and so we see that by being together we can do much more than just being on our own, and so we form a community, we form a state. All right? He, of course, believes, and this is a controversial part of Plato, of course, but you don't miss what he's trying to say through it, that we're born with different natures, all right? And for him, it's not just that we're born with different gifts or something like that. No, we're born with different natures. There was a seriousness in when he gave the myth of the metals, that some of us are simply born gold, some of us are born silver, some of us he's not a democrat in this sense. We're not all born equal. All right? That's in the sense that he's not a democrat. But he wants the fairest, most just, the best society that humans can achieve. Don't call it democrat. Don't call it oligarchy. Don't call it tyranny. Don't call it all these stupid names that nobody's been, they all have gone corrupt. This is why that's what he means. Right? That's why when they say he's anti-democratic. Well, he wasn't anti-democratic. He was trying to save all the great values that Pericles had been speaking about, that supposedly Athens had lived for a while. He was trying to save these democratic values from their corruption, from their sloganization, from their being used. Oh yeah, I'm a Democrat, but what I really do is I use whatever power I get to impose myself on the whole of society by having 50% or 51% of the people behind me. So he was trying to get, what's the best kind of type of thing we can get? Well, basically, we come together because specialization helps us. Division of labor helps us to produce more. If each one is doing what they can do best, and we're all getting together and benefiting from it, all right, then that's why we come together in a state. But he believes a state can be analyzed structurally into three necessary aspects, dimensions, 3 classes. And so, the word class is so abused. Caste, class. Marxism doesn't even mean by class what often sometimes we think by class. So don't take words, take it cheaply, and you'll miss the great people that have come before you, because people have cheapened them by making them slogans. Here he says there are 3 necessary elements to have any state. You need rulers, you need defenders, and you need producers. For him, this is everybody. Everybody in our whatever state we're in is either part of the ruling part of society, the defending part of society, or the producing part of society. Okay. Now, what is it that you need as an excellence, as a quality, as a power, if you like, by nature? What do you need to rule? What do you need by nature to defend? What do you need by nature to produce? All right? He believes that to rule, you must have wisdom. You don't have wisdom, you're never going to be able to rule well. Later, he tells you, of course, wisdom has to be coupled with, or wisdom has to include, in a sense, political savvy, ability to rule well as well. It's not just a theoretical. Okay. The defenders need courage. Okay. They need to be ready to die for the right reason. All right? And the producers need self-control. Self-mastery is a better word to translate what the Greek is, because when we say nowadays self-control, you have the Freudian influence of repression. Self-control. Right? Self-mastery, to be, on the contrary, to be your own master. Self-mastery means to be your own master, literally. And so what we want to do, therefore, our aim is to get the best people in society who discover, and we discover with them, that they have the best wisdom. These are the people we want to choose to make sure that they are also politically trained and savvy, and try to elect them. Well, now you're going to vote, some of you in Lebanon. People have just voted in Russia, and we go and vote. Democracy. Each one is a different situation if you think of them. Okay, so basically, what does he think the rulers need all 3. Wisdom, to be able to rule well, and not just for power, not for their own power, but to rule for the good of the polis, for the good of humanity. Right? They need wisdom. They need courage, because somebody might threaten to kill them if they don't do what they want to do. They need to have the courage to die for their polis. The producers need self-control, self-mastery. Themselves keep them doing what they're doing. Not somebody forcing them not to be the king or the prime minister, but they themselves. You want to find those people who are really excellent artists, who are really excellent businessmen, who are really excellent at the producer's level. Those who can do that very well. That's what you want to try to find. So why is he putting these out? Because he's also giving a roadmap here. He's also telling you, if you want to change society from its misery, you must try to work things out in such a way that people can know themselves. See, in the Republic, it's more sort of a self-awareness. Later on, at the end of his life, he writes the laws where he gives up on this. And he says, the only way we're going to get this is by force. But, don't forget that now. Think of the Republic, because Plato develops, like every great thinker, they develop. Here, he's still very optimistic, very hopeful. All right? The rationalist is usually hopeful and optimistic, all right? Before they then come crashing with reality sometimes. But basically, why do the producers need self-control? They need to control themselves, not to want to be head of the army or not to want to be president, if they're not really fit for it, just for the power of it, you see. So why do rulers need all 3? Well, because they need self-control so that they will do what? What do you think coming back down into the cave, in the cave story, even though I've just told it to you quickly, but those who were paying attention, once you come out of the cave, once you get knowledge, once you really are enlightened, Plato ends his cave story with this very important point. This person must come back down into the polis. What has he in mind? Who was assassinated? Who was condemned? Who was executed by the polis, by the community? Socrates. If you want to be a Socrates, if you want to get, that, and that's what Socrates is. He kept going. He refused, even at the very end, he refused to take wasta to get out of being executed. All right? You're going to have to be like that, So be realistic. If you want to be you want to be the ruler, then basically make sure you have the right capacity for it, the right nature, right? Make sure you get the right education. Look around for going to the best places where people are really educating you for truth, not for power. All right? Try to do your best in this kind of way, but you need courage to be a ruler, so that you won't just betray your country just because you're threatened, and you need self-control because you won't want to come back down into the polis. You need to control, to master yourself as a philosopher, to give your knowledge to humanity, not just to keep it for yourself. So the rulers need all three. The defenders need courage and self-control. And the producers need, and courage means, he defines it as knowing what to fear and what not to fear. Courage doesn't mean, go jump off the, go off the balcony here to show your girlfriend or your boyfriend how courageous you are. Right? They would just look at you and then say, too bad, he's a really stupid guy, haram. But, okay, this is stupidity, not courage. Okay, courage is rational. It means to get to know rationally what you should fear, what you should not fear. And then having the self-mastery to do it and to risk your life as a defender of the country, all right? And so that's a little bit of a thing that's what you'll be reading about in the first parts of your reading. So, justice in the state. What is justice in the soul? All right, so first of all, let's complete that. What's justice, therefore, in the state? When do we have justice? How can we get more justice than we have in the state? By changing society so that more and more people will be elected to be ruling or to be in power who combine these two capacity, the capacity of wisdom and power. Those who are defending are the ones who really have they don't just want to be, a corporal or a commander or a general just because of the glow of it. But they really have the element, they have the nature, the silver nature of they discover this, you see. Nobody tells them it. They suppose this is what's idealistic about it. But if you just take it as idealistic, you forget that it is actually, a good way of trying to see how things should move, at least so you know how to help it go. You may only go 1% or 2%, but at least you're going in the right direction. The more you work for some of these ideals that are being presented. Okay, so justice is a principle of order and differentiation. The cosmic order of Homer is all through. Order. Justice is order. Things being in their right place. The right people ruling, the right people defending, the right people producing. All right? And so justice is the proper order with the proper differentiation. Every person doing and possessing what properly belongs to one. The more we can, properly here means by nature. Okay? So the more you can get, the more justice you get, the more you get people discovering what is their nature, my bronze or my silver or my gold, to use that, and doing it. The more we can get people to do that, we will move our society from the misery it's in to more justice. It's not just minding your own business, by the way. That's how sometimes it's presented in modern English. Not minding your own business. You have to be, what did Thucydides say? He say, in Athens we say, those who say they mind their own business have no business here at all. So be careful when somebody gives you Plato he's telling you to mind your own business. Mind the business, do the thing you discover for yourself that you are, the things that you are best capable of doing. Why go for the things that you can't do best? Go for what you can do. So it's not just mind your own business. It's doing what you belong to do, and don't interfere with. Don't try to be a warrior. Don't try to be a ruler if you don't have the capacity for it. That's the meaning of don't interfere with one another. It's not this shallow, simple, mind your own business, because that means something very different in today's world. It can mean mind your own business in a serious way, but usually it means, each one for himself, don't get involved with anybody else. Okay, I'm going to have to wrap up quickly, but look, the soul becomes the same thing. He thinks a soul has to be a human soul, a human being, a human personality. You need to have an appetitive power, you need to have a spirited power, and you have to have a rational power, all right? That you need to, eat and drink and have sex, so you wouldn't have the human race, okay? The spirited element, be careful of that word. It's primarily, it doesn't mean spirit, neither in the French esprit, nor spirit in a monotheistic sense, or any spirit. It's spirited, all right? It means, your energy, okay? Now, so you have appetitive, you have instincts and all that. You have energy, but you have reason. the more you can get reason to be guiding the two, the more you have a harmonious soul, a just soul, a well-ordered soul. The less you do it, the more you have a sick soul. All right, and so when your spirited element is defending what your rational part wants to do, and not the appetitive, and when the appetitive is accepting to follow reason, that's your roadmap for getting your own self into better shape, away from the disease of that it's in, and the self, the lust for power that Thucydides has spoken about, the pleonexia, the greed. So justice, therefore, is internal order, harmony. So what does he say there? Notice when you're reading it, he says, because Glaucon has challenged him, give us a rational argument why the sophists are wrong. Why shouldn't we just do what we have power to do? If I have an invisible ring, I can go sleep with whomever I want. She won't even know who I am. I can go in and steal things. I can do whatever I like. Why should I not, rationally? And so this is the answer that he gives him. He tries supposedly giving him a rational answer to lead him to the conclusion. And the conclusion is basically, compare your soul with your body. Okay, whatever you understand by soul, it doesn't matter really here at this point, but compare your soul with your body. In your body, no rational person would say, I like to be sick. All right, that person is sick. He's not just sick in his body, he's sick elsewhere also. I like to be sick. Everybody rationally will agree that health is better than body always in the body. All right? Once you've understood, supposedly him, if you've been following his thinking, he's trying to let you, by analogy, see that your soul is so much, you are so much more more important than just your material part of you. Then you should be even more concerned for not having a sick soul. And what is a sick soul? A sick soul is when this is, insofar as this is not happening. You're not being guided by reason. All right? You're not being supported with your energy by your spirited element, and you're not being followed by the appetite. You are the prisoner of your feelings. Get in touch with your feelings, and I feel this way, and that's my master in the modern, in our period nowadays. All right? Plato would tell you that's the best recipe to be sick. Your feelings are great. They can be great, but only if reason is controlling it all. Right? Don't let your feelings decide what you want to conclude rationally, all right? And don't let your energy take you into killing someone or, vengeance and, yalla, you kill me, I'll kill 27 of you, No, control the parts you have of you. So this is a very mathematical kind of a thing. What are the necessary conditions, and what's the sufficient condition? The sufficient condition for justice is for those necessary conditions to be in harmony, in order, Homeric, cosmic order, but now it's a rational order. All right? When things are in order, you get justice. He takes you on from there to tell you this is only the beginning of the story. And now I don't have time to go on with that with you, but that's when you get into the simile of the cave, when you get into the simile of the sun, the other things you're reading, especially the simile of the cave and the divided line, he will tell you that the mind that is functioning poorly for power and all that is in the cave. All right? You're always going to have a diseased society and diseased human. You never have the good life. Coming out of it, you learn to use your mind, quote unquote, objectively, insofar as that has any meaning anymore today, but use it from the way you use it for mathematics. Not for power, but because you want to know the truth. You don't use math to get power. So mathematics, along the guidelines of using your mind that way, through music, through all sorts of things that are kind of, you can't just play, you can't change Beethoven's notes on the score, they're there. There's something objective there. You can do what you like with it. But the more you learn to think like that, and over time, and if you have the capacity, if only one person comes out of the cave, if you have the thing, you can then have the full knowledge of things, the vision of the good, so you would be the best person really to rule, because along the way, you've had mathematical training, musical training, you've been involved with politics, so philosopher does not mean philosopher the way you understand it today. Please remember that. Philosopher, for Plato, never means what a philosopher is today. Today, a philosopher is a specialized scholar in a specialized field, all right, usually living most of his time on doing research and teaching and all of this. Okay, the philosopher here, think of it more as the best possible type of human who should be ruling society, because he's ready to sacrifice, he's ready to come back down rationally. All right, he has knowledge, he has experience of society. You have to be 50 years old before you could be a philosopher, in this proper way of being educated for Plato. So it's not just a simple thing. Okay, as I said from the beginning, I just want to leave you with this, that basically the man was trying to launch the investigation rationally of political society and the good life, okay? From Socrates, the good life and what's good, all right? Plato focuses much more on the good for the sake of, we would say, humanity today, for the sake of the polis. Thank you for staying later than you needed to.